I never imagined that a simple act of kindness could lead to rescue from a life of chains. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air felt heavy, thick with despair and desperation. I stood on the cracked sidewalk, the world around me a blur of buzzing sounds and muted colors. My heart pounded in my chest, a frantic drum, urging me to move, to break free. I was trapped in the never-ending cycle of fear. Each day a gray haze overshadowed by turmoil. The life I lived was filled with shadows and chains that gripped tight. My mother, an echo of her former self, sat lost in a fog of pill bottles and broken dreams. Her laughter, now a distant memory, left a gaping hole. My father had disappeared long before. Maybe the grief swallowed him whole, or perhaps it was his own shame. Either way, I was alone in my cage that I remember the cold December day when a stranger entered my life. His name was Juan, a name as ordinary as any yet filled with unrecognizable power. He stepped out of a rusty blue van, a gentle smile breaking through the storm clouds of my world. He handed me a sandwich. Just a sandwich. But, oh, the warmth spilled from it like sunlight. I hesitated, my trembling hands hovering above it. And then I did the unreal. I accepted it. A simple act of kindness, but it unraveled everything. The moment our fingers brushed, a spark ignited. I could feel it as hope was palpable. He spoke softly, his words wrapping around me like a blanket. You're not alone. There's a world beyond this. His passion created ripples. Later that day, I found myself thinking about the conversations we had. I replayed his gentle voice in my mind while darkness closed in on me. What did he mean? What world? And what about the chains binding me? The days that followed were filled with unease. I always looked over my shoulder, scanning the streets for the blue van. I needed to see him again, to understand. But each time I thought about freedom, a chill swept through me. Was it possible? Could two worlds collide? Could I really step beyond this life of gray? In the silence of the nights that stretched long, I heard whispers of change, like a distant call from the unknown. Fear clawed at me, but then I envisioned Juan's smile, the light in a dark place. Could one moment of kindness open the door to everything I desired? Just when I thought I had the answer, a shadow of doubt lingered behind. There was a knock at the door, loud, forceful, disrupting my thoughts. My heart raced. Was it him? Or was I about to be pulled back into the chains I fought so hard to escape? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The knock persisted, fierce and unyielding, echoing in the hollow corners of my heart. The shadows in my modest home cast elongated shapes on the walls. Each quiver of the door vibrated through my chest, drumming up memories of dreaded visits. My breath came short, caught in the web of anticipation and fear, uncertainty strangling me. I shouldn't have answered. Every instinct screamed at me to retreat into silence, to hide in the refuge of my shame. Yet the pull of curiosity was stronger than the fear cocooning me. Taking a trembling step forward, I opened the door, half expecting the walls of my existence to crumble down. There stood a figure, familiar and yet distant, a stranger wrapped in a guise that my broken spirit desired. It was Juan. His presence was an anchor in my storm. I was worried, he said, his voice steady, eyes catching glimmers of warmth, yet filled with concern. I hadn't seen you in a few days. My heart raced at the sound of his voice, a melody that resonated in the air laden with unspoken burdens. I didn't know if you would come back, I stuttered, each word a whispered confession. Grief wrestled with hope, and I felt the chains tightening, threatening to pull me back, away from this moment, this light. I wouldn't just disappear, he smiled, the gentleness of it wrapping around me like a promise. Can I come in? As I stepped aside, I noticed the fleeting warmth of his presence soon turned to a chill. The space was cluttered with remnants of a decaying life, a mixture of my mother's disarray and my own retreat into despair. I can't promise you a perfect world, he said, his voice tinged with careful understanding as his gaze swept across the room. But what if we take just one step together? My heart fluttered, a fragile bird yearning to soar, yet tethered to the ground. What do you mean? I asked, the words spilling out like a desperate plea. I found a community center, he said, the corners of his mouth curling upward in a manner that hinted at hope. They're building a program aimed at helping young people like you. The world could have shattered around me, and yet this simple revelation carved out space for something undefined, perhaps a glimmer of a chance or the breath of possibility. You'd go with me? I fumbled, doubts ricocheting within me, stinging with insecurity. Of course. You don't have to go alone. The room echoed with silence as I contemplated the weight of his gentle promise. With each second, exhilaration battled dread. What if the world outside was just as desolate and fraught, would be even deeper? But the chains, they felt different now. Juan's presence provided a softness that began unraveling the tightly bound shackles surrounding my heart. You have to promise me you'll try, he urged, the intensity in his gaze holding me captive. Just as I opened my mouth to speak, to declare my willingness, I heard a faint sound, a muffled voice from the shadows deeper in the house. It was my mother. Who is there? She called, her voice tinged with a mixture of alarm and incoherence. Juan's eyes widened, concern flickering across his face. We should go, he whispered, urgency in his words, pulling gently on my arm, as if the fabric of reality could unravel if exposed for too long. No, wait. I hesitated, the moment unraveling itself like threads in a frayed tapestry. She needs help too. But before Juan could respond, the tension cracked like glass, the door creaked further open, and in a haze, she stumbled into view, her eyes clouded and unrecognizing, grasping onto things that weren't there. I felt her loss wash over me like an insurmountable wave. And in that moment, as the weight of my choice pressed down harder than ever, my mother's gaze bore through me, and she uttered something unexpected, something that drew us all into a terrifying stillness. Why are you with him? Get away from that man. They're watching. The words hung in the air, and everything froze. The clock ticking in the back of my mind echoed ominously, and my heart thudded against the cage of my ribcage. The clarity of my mother's words struck me, igniting a panic that surged through my veins. Who was watching? And how deeply had the chains I fought against wound their way into our lives? In an instant, hope collided violently with fear, and I was left standing on the precipice of a truth I wasn't sure I was ready to face. The blue van pulled up outside, and I felt the cold chill of dread creep down my spine. Would I be able to escape this burden, or was I now trapped in a web of shadows even deeper than before? The van's engine hummed softly, but within me chaos erupted. I stood at the intersection of hope and fear, where my mother's frantic assertion reverberated like a banshee's wail in my mind. Get away from that man, she had said. The words sliced through me, carving deeper grooves into the already well-furrowed soil of my heart. Juan's hand, still warm against my arm, felt like an anchor against a tempest. What does she mean? He whispered, his eyes wide with concern. I could see the cogs turning in his mind, unraveling the tangle of fears and uncertainties surrounding us. Mom, please, I said, my voice quiet, almost a plea. What do you think is happening? I wanted to shake her, to wake her from whatever prison her mind had constructed, but an invisible barrier held me back. Her gaze wandered past me, unfocused and haunted. They're always watching, always waiting. She murmured, her hands trembling as they clawed at the air. You can't trust him. He'll bring you more pain. Each frantic word twisted the knife in my heart deeper, as if she were trying to protect me, and yet suffocating me at the same time. My breath hitched, the weight of expectation pressing down as I tried to process her plea. Could one really be a risk? Or was this just my mother, entangled in her own gabble of fears and phantoms? I turned to Juan, searching for reassurance in his eyes, but instead, I saw panic mirrored right back at me. Let us just go, he urged softly, his voice a blend of authority and protection. We don't need to stay. But in that moment, something caught my eye. Through the window, I saw a figure emerge from the van, a woman in a long coat, the sun glinting off angular features, and a sharp, assessing gaze that settled unnervingly on us. My heart sank. Something about her presence felt charged with foreboding. An electric current of urgency sparked through me. No, I said suddenly, a surge of defiance bubbling to the surface. This was my life, damn it. We can't just leave her here like this. She needs help. Juan stepped back, his uncertainty adding weight to the tension pressing down on me. If they are watching, your mother might be right. We should. Before he could finish, my mother began to sob, her voice breaking through her hazy confusion. My love, I can't lose you too. They want to take you away. Something inside me snapped. The memory of my mother's laughter, the feeling of safety from her arms, clashed with this twisted version of her that I found myself grappling with now. She was trapped in a nightmare, but somehow, I felt ensnared in it too. Please, just listen to me, I implored, stepping toward her. I want to help you. Together, we can find a way out. Juan lingered at the door, indecision etched across his face. The woman outside, meanwhile, crept closer, her presence looming like a dark cloud over my resolve. I'd never faced anything so visceral, the icy grip of fear clashing with the warmth of hope I felt in Juan's eyes. Suddenly, the woman stopped, her gaze locking onto Juan with an intensity that felt almost predatory. You need to leave, she said, her tone flat but laced with an undertow of threat. You don't belong here. Why are you all of a sudden playing the hero? Juan challenged, standing tall. Who are you? Instead of responding, the woman sauntered forward, her energy shrouded in a manipulation I couldn't define. You don't understand the risks, both of you. She's dragging you down. Stop, I shouted, rage fueling my sudden need to protect Juan. You don't know what you're talking about. Her lips curved into a smile, but there was nothing kind about it. Oh, darling, I know so much more than you think. Your mother, she chose this path long ago. You're just a pawn in her game. The air thickened, the tension coiling tighter as Juan's fingers released my arm, and I felt the warmth leaving me, shifting into uncertainty. The realization hit me harder than the chill that swept through the room. How could I trust anyone, trapped in a battle between love and fear? I clutched my mother's hand desperately. Mom, snap out of it. We can't let her come between us. Her eyes met mine, swirling with confusion and flickers of recognition. I could sense the slightest shift in her demeanor, a glimmer of clarity breaking through the fog that surrounded her. I need, she stammered, as if the fight within her was rising to the surface, battling against the shadows that clung tightly around her. But then something else caught my eye. The van door opened again, and two more figures emerged, their movements jerky and deliberate. I felt my breath hitch, realization flooding me with terror. They looked familiar. Too familiar. Mom, I gasped, sensing the tides of a nightmare rushing back to me like a flood, crashing against everything I thought I could salvage. And in that moment, as fear and confusion spiraled around us, my world tilted on its axis. The hard truth thudded through my veins. Would I stand and fight for my mother? Or would I succumb to an unseen force, one that had been orchestrating this entire chaos? The choice felt monumental, a turn down a path that could either lead to salvation or darkness, and as I stood paralyzed, I realized the truth weighed far heavier than any chains I had yet to break. Would I risk everything, or would I allow fear to claim me once again? I stood rooted at that intersection, where hope twisted sharply into despair, and the figures emerging from the van loomed larger than life. Each face struck me with a terror I didn't know I could feel. The coolness of their expressions, the calculated precision of their movements, it all played out like a ghastly tableau designed to break me down. Mom, please, I urged again, squeezing her limp hand tighter, desperate for any sign of her return. You have to fight this. Whatever they want, we can face it together. But my words seemed to dissolve in the charged air around us, swallowed by the darkness coiling in the woman's eyes. The last time you faced them, dear, what did it bring you? She asked, a mocking lilt creeping into her voice. It brought me to this moment. I shot back, my own uncertainty battling against the emotions swirling within me. I'm not powerless, and neither is she. Juan's gaze darted between us, his uncertainty piqued by my defiance. You're putting yourself in danger, he hissed, taking a step closer to the shadows lurking behind the newly emerged figures. The woman stepped toward him, closing the gap with glacial precision. And who's going to protect her if you can't even save yourself? She taunted, her voice dripping with disdain. I could see her intentions like a wicked flame behind her cool veneer, ready to scorch everything I loved. One of the figures from the van, a man with sunken eyes, took a deliberate step forward, his gaze laser-focused. You should simply let her go. She's been lost to us for far too long, and the longer you hold on, the more you'll be ensnared in her darkness. The words struck like wet stones, heavy and unforgiving, leaving me rattled as echoes of my past flickered in my mind. The moments lost to my mother's descent, the late-night screams, the empty conversations. Bubbles of dread pooled in my stomach, threatening to swallow me whole. You're wrong. Thunder trembled in my voice. You don't get to decide what's best for her. As I turned back toward my mother, a small flicker of recognition drew my attention. Her eyes widened slightly, an expression that I couldn't decipher, almost as if she had made out a glimmer of the little girl she once nurtured. Sweetheart, she murmured, her voice trembling as she reached up tentatively. The moment felt fragile, like a glass sculpture teetering precariously on the edge of a table. Just hold on to me, I said, searching her eyes for confirmation, for trust. We can fight this together, like we always used to. But just as her fingers began to tighten around mine, the man stepped even closer, a condescending smile painting his lips. You think you're stronger than this? Give in, child. Let her go. The pain she brings is far greater than you can imagine. Anger surged within me, mingling with fear, a cocktail that threatened to blind my judgment but ignited my spirit. No, I shouted louder now. The faces of my past, the moments of despair, the haunting memories of watching her slip away, all collided into a fierce resolve. You will not take her from me. Suddenly, a flash from the corner of my eye caught my attention. The long-coated woman had begun to move with a fierceness that made my stomach churn, her arm outstretched toward my mother, as if reaching to snatch her away. In that instant, chaos erupted. Juan lunged forward just as I pulled my mother close, shielding her body with mine. Stop! I screamed, feeling the tight coil of desperation pulling me backward. In an unexpected moment of clarity, the trembling, frightened woman I had known as my mother exhaled sharply and gathered her fading strength. No more, she said, her voice gaining an assertiveness that sent a wave of hope crashing over me. Every ounce of love I'd ever held for her poured into that single moment. You will not take her. Time froze, the air pregnant with tension. I could hardly breathe, both terrified and emboldened by her fierce declaration. For the first time in what felt like ages, I could see a glimmer of resilience dancing in her trembling eyes. But then, from behind the emerging figures, a new sound broke the suffocating silence. A high-pitched, desperate scream echoed through the space, reverberating off the metal walls of the van, stealing the very breath from my lungs. Mom! No! The voice pierced through the chaos, splicing the air with unrelenting urgency. I turned just in time to see a girl who looked eerily familiar, emerging from behind one of the figures. The unmistakable resemblance made my heart stop. She had the same troubled eyes, the same wild curls that danced around her face. A sister? A shadow of a life that could have been. Before I could grasp the implications, the ground beneath my feet shifted, and everything I'd fought for teetered uncertainly. As the shadows closed in, I felt strands of my life unraveling at an alarming rate, leaving me desperately grasping at hope in a darkness that threatened to consume us all. How could I rescue my mother when a piece of me was being held captive in the very fabric of this haunting reality? The choice pressed heavily against my chest. Would I fight for my family, or was I too late to save anyone at all? The piercing scream reverberated in my ears, drowning out everything else. I felt the weight of the moment, an invisible force drawing me away from the fragile bond one was starting to rebuild with my mother. It took every ounce of effort to divert my focus onto the girl. Who was she? Was she truly a sister, or just a painful reminder of what once was? The crowd of figureheads surrounding us jostled, their intent unmistakable. My heart raced as I absorbed the sight of the girl. She had to be no older than 14, her face a canvas of fear, anger, and desperation. You don't have to do what they say, she pleaded, her voice trembling but fierce. They're lying to you. Please, just run. But where could we run? The very air felt thick with oppression, a viscous force field created by the malicious intent surrounding us. The figures shifted, and I wanted to push back, to shield my mother and find a way to escape this nightmare. Yet, the gentle grip of her hand remained on mine, grounding me in this chaotic storm. Who is she? My mother's voice broke through my spiraling thoughts, her gaze flickering between the girl and me, a rush of recognition dawning. But it seemed to cast shadows around her, twisting her expression into one of anguish. I'm not sure, I sputtered. The urge to flee collided painfully with the duty to protect. But she looks like you like me. The long-coated woman, having regained her composure, stepped closer, cutting through our moment of confusion. The lost girl, she said mockingly, her voice oozing with satisfaction. Another casualty of her weakness. She belongs with us now. As if on cue, the girl jutted her chin forward defiantly. You're not taking me anywhere, she shouted, the raw power in her voice taking me by surprise. Courage seeped into the very marrow of my bones. If she could stand tall, surely I could too. Stay away from her, I yelled as tears pooled at the corners of my eyes, fueled by the overwhelming mix of fear and the purest kind of love. She is not one of you. The figures shifted, their eyes narrowing at our display of unity, and for an instant, I felt emboldened by this connection. However, the man with sunken eyes merely chuckled, as if our defiance entertained him. Do you think this little display will save her? His voice was cool, mocking, but the way my mother appeared to be waning sent a tremor of ice through my veins. Suddenly, the dark twist in my gut amplified a realization that the shadows had always been present, just waiting for the right moment to snatch away hope. I wished for a weapon, a bolt of strength to strike against them. I will not let you hurt her, I screamed once more, clutching my mother's hand with renewed fervor. For an agonizing moment, the atmosphere grew thick with every emotion, from despair to determination. Just as I contemplated what I could do next, the girl stepped closer to me, her eyes burning bright with a purpose I didn't quite understand. You have to trust me. I can help, she whispered, urgency threading through her words. Beneath the pressure of escalating fear, I took a chance. What do you know? I pressed, my heart racing, longing for the glimmer of salvation she seemed to promise. But before she could answer, a blinding light erupted, illuminating the space and causing the figures to recoil. I glimpsed a small device that she clutched in her hand, a makeshift lantern flickering to life against the gloom. Joy mixed with disbelief, spreading warmth through my chest. Now, she shouted, her voice cutting through the tumult like a beacon. We can move together. The figures shuffled backward, momentarily blinded, giving me just enough time to take a step forward. I could feel my mother urging me to stand tall. I squeezed her hand tighter. We can't give in, I declared, flicking my gaze toward the girl. Let us. As we rooted ourselves in the anchor of hope, the darkness seemed to shrink, pulling back like a tide retreating before a storm. We surged forward to escape the grasp of the figures, but as I prepared to follow the girl, I noticed something amiss. Another shouted warning rang out. The long-coated woman was regaining composure, and with one fierce wave of her hand, she crashed down like thunder. You think you can run? Do you even know the cost? She roared, her voice slicing through the air like a knife. Out of nowhere, the ground trembled in response, a violent shudder that seemed to split reality open. I turned away from her, focused on my mother, but at that moment, the girl let out a strangled cry, her device sputtering and flickering ominously. Sky. The words slipped from her lips like a prayer, and suddenly, the oppressive darkness began to wield an impossible weight, dragging us downward. My heart raced as gravity twisted around us. I gripped my mother tighter, feeling the tension of the moment build, and realized with dreadful clarity that hope was suddenly slipping through our fingers. Did we dare trust this girl, this potential sister, or was she merely another tangled thread in this web of despair? As the ground quaked beneath our feet and our surroundings warped into shadows, a new revelation clawed its way into my mind, leaving an icy chill in its wake. What if the cost was not only my mother's freedom, but my own very identity? In that moment of paralyzing fear, I didn't know how I would fight against the forces determined to tear us apart, or if I even could. And as we began to fall, the future felt as fragile as a wisp of smoke, impossible to hold on to amidst rising chaos. The world trembled around us, the ground splitting in an agonizing display, but within the chaos, the faintest flicker of hope remained alive. As I grasped my mother's hand tighter, an inexplicable warmth flowed between us, an unspoken bond that tethered us to reality amidst the surreal tempest. It felt as if, in this moment of shared fear, our spirits intertwined, enabling us to take a bold step forward together. The girl Sky, I now realized, planted herself firmly in front of us, her fierce determination serving as a shield. "We can't stop. Follow me," she shouted, her voice capable of cutting through the fray. Taking a deep breath, I nodded to my mother, allowing a glimmer of trust to rise through the storm of doubt. Together, we surged towards Sky. The flickering lantern in her hands illuminated our path, casting back shadows that twisted like hungry beasts. I could feel the warmth of her courage wrap around us, igniting a fire within my heart. But as we moved forward, the figures with sunken eyes converged, their menacing presence looming like storm clouds ready to unleash fury. "Do you think you can escape so easily?" the man barked, laughter dripping with malice. It filled the air, mingling with the dreadful rumble of the earth beneath us. "You're just pawns in a game none of you understand." Beneath his jeering words, my dread blossomed like a poisonous flower. The weight of his assertion anchored me momentarily, threatening to pull me back into the abyss of hopelessness. Just when I thought I might falter, Sky paused to glance back at me, her eyes gleaming with fierce resolve. "Stay close," she commanded, and with that, the fear in my chest flickered like the light of her lantern, a fragile, flickering flame struggling against the wind. As we pushed forward, I could see the pathway opening up ahead. The darkness seemed to throb with life, as if sensing our fight, a merciless predator closing in. Suddenly, Sky tripped, her device clattering against the ground as the light flickered dangerously. In that dreadfully slow moment, everything felt as though it might come crashing down upon us. "Sky," I called, desperate to keep her spirit alive. I ran back, barely a step before I felt my mother's grip tighten around my wrist, grounding me. "We can't leave her. Trust her. She'll find a way," my mother urged, an urgency pulsing from her words. I hesitated, pain and loyalty warring within me. Finally, I turned just in time to see Sky scrambling to her feet, her flagging lantern beginning to steady. "I'm okay," she exclaimed, her breath shallow but fierce determination striking a chord within me. The insistent weight of fear slipped from my shoulders, finding solace in the belief that our collective strength could overcome the darkness. Together, we pressed on, and Sky led us away from the encroaching figures, her lantern guiding us through an ever-darkening tunnel. Each step felt like a conscious choice, one that reaffirmed our fight against the despair that threatened to swallow us whole. But just when it seemed we might catch our breath, the earth trembled again, more violently this time. A fissure opened with a deafening crack, splitting the ground between us and the figures pursuing us. I clenched my mother's hand, desperation giving rise to terror. The darkness behind us surged, spilling forth like a flood. Sky's lantern flickered as if sensing our dwindling chances, the flame pulsating as shadows crept toward us, hungry and unyielding. I glanced at my mother, her face etched with fear, but also something I had almost forgotten: fierce hope. "Keep going," Sky cried, her voice pushing us forward, igniting that fragile warmth again. We ventured into the uncertainty, a small island of light amidst the rising tide of despair. The girl, the sister I had never known, illuminating our path like a beacon. But just as we rounded a bend, the tunnel opened into an expansive cavern, revealing a sight that made my heart drop. Beneath our feet lay chasms that seemed to stretch into eternity, a deadly labyrinth leading to depths unknown. "This way," Sky pointed, to a narrow path winding dangerously along the edge of a precipice, and without hesitation, my mother and I rushed to follow. In that moment, everything felt precarious, the air thick with anticipation, as if the walls around us were aware of our predicament and determined to thwart our escape. Each step along the path felt like an act of defiance, a testament to our tenacity amid a world designed to break us. But suddenly, a shout echoed behind us, freezing my blood. The figures with empty eyes had emerged from the shadows, their silhouettes stark against the flickering lantern light. I turned just in time to see the long-coated woman raise her hand, palms cupped as if gathering power. You cannot run forever. She screeched, words laced with venom. You belong to me. It was then I realized we were not just racing against darkness, but against the twisted threads of our own pasts. What was I clinging to? Some semblance of family I had just rediscovered, or the painful truth that binded us all? Before I could reason it out or respond, she unleashed a wave of energy, the air ripping apart with a ferocious howl. The ground beneath my feet trembled violently, a warning of what was coming. I staggered, and then with a heart-stopping crack, the earth surged beneath us. I glanced back, eyes wide, to see that fissure yawning open, growing and threatening to swallow everything in its path. In that moment of utter angst, I realized one inevitable truth: everything I had fought for might be lost in a heartbeat. And as the darkness surged forward, a sudden weightlessness took hold, pulling me toward the edge of the abyss. I gasped, and within that breath held a shocking revelation. In their pursuit to reclaim what we had lost, we had begun to lose ourselves. The flickering light from Sky's lantern dimmed, leaving us to wrestle with the shadows that clouded our hearts, leaving us with only one heart-stopping choice, one that would define our fate forever. In the chaotic world of trembling earth and encroaching shadows, the void beckoned beneath me with a terrifying allure. The weightlessness intensified, pulling at my very core. I couldn't help but gasp at the suddenness of it all, the edge of despair looming like a dark sea ready to swallow me whole. Hold on, I've got you. Sky's voice cut through the torrent of emotions swirling around me. For a fleeting moment, I felt her presence solidifying my resolve. I had fallen, yes, but I was not alone, not yet. With her hand grasped tightly around my wrist, the warmth radiated through the cold tendrils of fear that cascaded down my spine. The abyss beneath was seductive in its silence, whispering promises of an end to the turmoil that consumed us. But I refused to succumb. I would not let darkness claim me, now not when hope flickered so dimly against the oppressive weight of despair. Fighting against the weight of the void, I hurled myself backward, propelled by a sudden surge of adrenaline. Sky pulled me back to safety, and with a ragged breath, I found solid ground beneath my feet. But the harrowing reality of our situation crashed over me anew. The fissures behind us gaped wider, and the figures with sunken eyes were closer than ever. Keep moving, my mother urged, her voice breaking through the haze of fear. It was a command tinged with desperation, pushing me toward action. I glanced back, just in time to see the long-coated woman surging forward, her intention as clear as the dark sky above. She wanted to reclaim the pieces of our lives that had been shattered. We resumed our flight, the harrowing echoes of the woman's words clinging to me like a haunting melody. You belong to me. What did that truly mean? I could see now that it was a shackle meant to bind me not just to her, but to all the pain I had escaped. For the first time, I wondered what chains I had been dragging behind me, what connections I had forged in this chaos. Sky led us along the precarious path, the lantern flickering, a vulnerable beacon battling the encroaching darkness. Each footfall thundered in my chest, echoing my racing thoughts. My mind drifted to our last conversation, the warmth of my mother's hand wrapped around mine, and I felt the weight of our shared history pressing down on me. There, in that cave where destiny felt suffocating, my heart ached with uncertainty. I could feel the pull of those unanswered questions dragging at the seams of my being. Questions about the past that shaped our present and the futures that still lay uncertain before us. What had once felt like a distant nightmare now loomed closer with every heartbeat. We were haunted by who we were and what we had lost. Just as a flicker of doubt began to cloud my spirit, a sudden sound shattered the air, a distant roar of wind intertwined with an unfamiliar melody, one that seemed to vibrate through the rugged walls of the cavern. Hope surged against uncertainty. Could it be the song of rescue? Wait, Sky said, pausing on the precipice. Her eyes sparkled with a mix of fear and exhilaration. Do you hear that? For a fleeting moment, I thought I sensed something, an unexpected kindness emerging from the shadows, a promise dancing in the air like petals in a gentle breeze. But before I could respond, the figures behind us lunged forward, their momentum threatening to overpower us in a breathless instant. Run, my mother shouted, urgency punctuating her every word as she yanked me along the edge of the cliff. The heat of her grip offered solace, charging my spirit with the reminder of what we were fighting for. Together, we hurtled through the cavern, the unexpected melody growing louder, intertwining with the chaos. There was no going back. As we raced toward an unknown destination, I felt the edges of my heart expand, battling against the fear that threatened to take root. Maybe, just maybe, that melody could guide us to a sanctuary beyond the shadows. But the chase took an unexpected turn. An unseen fissure opened closer behind us, swallowing the echo of hope we had just begun to grasp. I glanced back, dread clawing at my throat, and saw the long-coated woman, her furious eyes trained on us. She stumbled. Caught in the turmoil, she had wielded her own connection to the unseen valley of despair, threatening to claim her as well. In that moment, the irony gripped my heart. She was wielding chains of her own, binding herself to the chaos, and then, within that fleeting silence, the ground beneath us shifted, the very fabric of our world quaking as though the earth itself was alive, battling darkness for supremacy. Just as the light from Sky's lantern wavered, I caught a glimpse of something extraordinary, a glimmer of light reflected from the depths of the abyss, piercing through the veil of shadows. It was then that I realized. What if our fear could manifest into something stronger? What if we, untethered by the chains that bound us, could harness the very fears that hunted us? The thought gripped me, stirring a new strength deep within. But as we faced the unfolding chaos, the realization echoed through my mind, leaving a lingering question: if we dared to face the abyss, what price might we pay? With every inch we gained, our hopes grew tangled with overwhelming fears, and just as we approached a faint outline that hinted at an exit ahead, the ground heaved beneath us once more. I felt a sudden jolt, a pull that sent my heart racing. The cave trembled more than it had before, and suddenly, everything hung in the balance. In that moment, a new realization struck me, igniting the flicker of light that had been growing within. We were not just fighting for our lives. We were fighting to redefine our truths against the chains that held us back. But beneath that triumphant thought loomed a chilling question. What would we have to sacrifice to reclaim the light? And could we even escape the shadows that bound us? As the echo of the unseen melody enveloped us, the path ahead narrowed, and with one last surge of energy, we reached the precipice where light and shadow danced in a volatile embrace before the ground gave way. Everything I had believed about safety and family crumbled. The moment opened itself into an overwhelming silence that led me to one irrevocable truth. Sometimes the chains shimmered brighter than the light itself, and we had yet to uncover the true power of our own resolve. The darkness swallowed us whole, and for a moment, I felt suspended between worlds. The rush of air, the weight of gravity shifting, terror clawed at my insides. I grasped for anything the edges of reality blurred, and I couldn't tell if I was falling or flying. It was then that the unexpected thing happened. A sense of utter clarity washed over me. I felt a serene whisper inside, sharper than the chaos around us, a quiet certainty that we were not truly alone in this exodus. Sky's grip tightened around my wrist, her body next to mine, anchor points amidst the swirling tempest. Then, I saw it, an ethereal shimmer flickering at the edge of my vision, illuminating the darkness from within like fireflies dancing in the thick night. Before I could fully comprehend its meaning, the earth jostled us, breaking me from my reverie. When we crashed to the ground, no longer weightless, but grounded in jagged stone and hope, I barely had time to register my surroundings. The air felt electric, charged with a force stronger than fear. We were in a cavernous expanse, the walls engraved with ancient symbols glowing faintly, casting eerie shadows that whispered secrets of old. The haunting melody fused with the pulse of time, beckoning us deeper. "Are you okay?" Sky asked, breathless, her brows knotted in concern. "I think so," I replied, but my voice trembled. A mixture of disbelief and wonder coursed through me. How could I reconcile the fragility of our situation with this unexpected luminosity? My mother's face was pale, but her eyes held a flicker of determination. "We need to move. This place, it feels alive." Her gaze flickered toward the symbols, a look of realization washing over her features. The darkness encroached behind us, but it was the glimmer of hope ahead. shimmering like dawn breaking over storm clouds that formed the core of my resolve. Through the luminous symbols, I felt the stirrings of something ancient, some force that defined our destinies before we even arrived. As we crept forward, our footsteps echoing off the stone, I caught whispers voices from the past swirling around us. They felt familiar, yet distant, like hollow echoes of unspoken truths. I could hear fragments of laughter and sorrow, love and loss. They painted our lives in intricate strokes of bittersweet affection. Can you hear them? I asked, entranced. Yes, my mother's voice turned soft. It's as if they're telling us something important. Sky reached out to touch one of the symbols, and as her fingers brushed the stone, it shimmered brighter, illuminating her face, reflecting courage in her eyes. It's like they want us to remember, she said, to face our fears, our past. In that moment, flickers of joy were intertwined with the remnants of pain experienced. Those chains of past afflictions clinked like distant chimes. Every step we took into that cavern thrust us into the embrace of vulnerabilities we had learned to conceal, creating a tapestry that hung heavy in the air. But even as the melody swelled, a dread shadow loomed behind us. The long-coated woman was there, not far, her presence saturating the air with a chilling tension. She seemed less formidable now, more like a specter chasing lost moments. But still, she radiated an energy that felt intoxicating, like she was straddling the line between chaos and clarity. Suddenly, as we rounded a bend, a terrible truth struck me. What if she, too, had once been a victim of this collapse? What if the journey through pain was not just ours? As that realization grounded me, the cavern shook again, this time more violently. Light flared, and a shock wave emanated from the symbols, shattering the darkness for an instant, chasing away our fear and illuminating the path ahead. I lunged forward, heart pounding with newfound tenacity, not letting the horrors of our past paralyze me. Just then, Sky and my mother grasped my hands, pulling me into an embrace as a blinding light enveloped us. We were lifted, caught in the whirlwind, as the abyss of our fears threatened to devour the remnants of who we thought we were. But instead of succumbing to that maw of despair, we listened to the echo of those lost voices urging us to transform our sorrow into strength. The light pulsated, the symbols flickering beacons urging us toward what awaited on the other side. Just as the clarity swelled to a crescendo, a horrifying realization struck. What if the light we sought would blind us to the truth of our chains? What if freedom had a price greater than we could bear? Then, from beneath the veil of encroaching shadows, a laugh broke through the long-coated woman's voice filled with both menace and longing. You cannot outrun what you are. Her words pierced through the resonance of the light, tethering me back to the present and smothering hope with doubt. In that instant, we were suspended in the throes of the unknown, a kaleidoscope of fear and hope intertwining as I found my voice trapped in the depths of my heart. I had chased light into the abyss, but the lingering weight of the past held indisputable sway. Could we escape the chains that shimmered in the darkness? Would we be able to reconcile the echoes of our past with a destiny waiting in the light? In that moment, something within me erupted, a stirring courage conjoined with a haunting fear, as a question boiled to the surface. Would facing the truth of ourselves lead us to liberation, or had we already stepped into a trap from which we could never return? And as I stood there, teetering on the edge, the cavern roared, trembling as shadows clawed at the fabric of our fragile existence. Behind Sky and my mother, the long-coated woman smiled, and for the first time, I felt a pang of understanding, a strange connection binding us all, one that had yet to reveal its true power. A world of uncertainty spun around us, and I was left dangling at the threshold, confronted with an impossible choice. What if our very survival hinged on unearthing the truth of our chains? Would I dare to dive deeper into the darkness, ready to face whatever lay ahead? As the echoes of the cavern swirled around us, it became hard to distinguish where the light ended and the darkness began. The symbols that had once flickered with promise now seemed to waver like a mirage trapped in the tumult of our fears. I clung tightly to Sky and my mother, our hands entwined in a grip that spoke of shared strength and vulnerability, but uncertainty hung thick in the air, threatening to unravel us. Then the ground quaked again, a vicious roar of the earth that rattled my bones and sent sharp stones tumbling into the abyss. Panic squeezed my chest, and instinctively, I turned toward the long-coated woman, her face obscured but her gaze penetrating through the shadows. For a fleeting moment, I believed that if I could understand her, perhaps we could bridge the chasm that lay between our experiences. "I know you don't trust me," she said, her voice surprisingly gentle, yet still imbued with an edge of steel. "But I am not your enemy. I was once lost, just like you." Her eyes glimmered briefly, and I saw a flicker of something. Was it regret? A kind of sadness that echoed my own. "Then why pursue us?" I dared to question, my voice trembling, echoing the mixed courage and fear within. "Because sometimes, fear is the only way to find the light, to face the shadows buried within," she replied, each word whispered with deliberate calmness. "This darkness belongs to each of us. It feeds on our insecurities, our pain." "Is that what you thrive on?" Sky spat, pulling away slightly as if repulsed by the very idea that we could share a common ground. "You're not one of us." The woman's laughter rang soft and melancholic through the chamber. "I was lost in a darkness you can hardly imagine. But in your fight against it, I see a flicker of hope, a chance for redemption for both of us." My mother shifted, her voice barely a whisper. Could it be true? The dim stone around us shimmered again, and a small warmth blossomed in my chest, a strange sensation of understanding mingled with suspicion. We had each borne our burdens for far too long, hidden beneath the weight of chains that fed on silence and despair. Could it be that we were all simply searching for the same elusive truth, albeit on different paths? Still, I wasn't ready to take the leap, not when the path felt treacherous and foreboding. "You want us to trust you while you stand alongside our darkest fears," I asserted, the knot in my stomach tightening. "Only you can confront your true self," she replied, the cavern hum vibrating with her words. "But I can guide you, if you'll allow it." And when the first flicker of kindness stirred in the darkness, an unexpected connection blossomed amidst the uncertainty. Just then, echoing through the reverberating walls, came a sudden rush, a wave of others, faces I could just barely make out in the flickering light. Refugees from this cavern of fears and regrets, their expressions raw and battered, yet unyielding. "What do we do?" one of them called out, panic lighting their gaze. "We face it together," Sky said, surprising even herself, a new resolve rising as she involuntarily spread her arms wide. "We learn from it. We turn the pain inside out." That moment of unity sparked something profound within me, igniting a flame where shadows once lurked. Together, we were stronger. The weight that had seemed insurmountable now felt almost viable, a burden shared among souls wandering the same path. The woman nodded, a tiny smile breaking through. "You see, when kindness pierces through the cold, we begin to reclaim the light within." Fingers twitched toward the cavern walls, hesitant at first, but ultimately finding their place alongside one another. One by one, the others joined us, every hopeful essence burning brighter together. Enduring the struggles and acknowledging the pain suddenly felt monumental, a collective step toward forgiveness. As I reached toward the delicate symbols, a pulse of warmth shot through me, a chain loosening just enough to bring me closer to that echo of truths hidden beneath years of heartache. But the shadows did not dissipate easily. The long-coated woman's laughter twisted in the air, a stark reminder of the monsters lurking just outside our resolve. A flicker of light is nothing against the vast chasm of darkness. "You think this is all it takes?" With her words, an icy dread crept back into us, and once again that question loomed large. Were we truly prepared to confront not only our darkness, but also the corruption that festered in the corners of our hearts? A horrified gasp escaped another's lips, a warning echoing against the pulsating light. "Look!" And in that split second, the symbols on the wall fractured under the pressure of fear, spilling forth shadows thicker than midnight, cloaked figures rallying to thwart the flickering flame we had unwittingly ignited. It dawned on me then. Our journey had become one of survival, not just liberation. The kindness we offered must endure the darkness that could smother it at a moment's notice. Together, we stood against the tide, hearts pounding as shadows surged forth, threatening to drag us back into despair. The cavern swallowed our collective cries in a cacophony as the air became electric with the tension of confrontation. Just as I grasped the profound strength and unity, the back of my mind screamed a warning I couldn't shake. What if the darkness wanted us to unveil the truth, only to snuff out the flame of hope before it fully ignited? In that deepest of breaths, I realized that perhaps our darkest hour was not in the shadows, but in the moments that preceded our definitive stand. Would we find the courage to embrace the light together, or would the darkness reclaim us, revealing a horror deep beneath that we were never meant to witness? Our answer cascaded through the cavern, colliding with the encroaching shadows who would emerge victorious in this battle between light, darkness, and the aching truths we all must face. The shadows surged around us, as thick as sorrow, threatening to clamp down like an iron fist, but in that moment, amidst the chaos, I felt something shift within me, an ember ignited by the bonds forged in our shared fears and resilience. The cavern pulsed with a life of its own, walls echoing with the fragmented memories of battles fought and lost. We could not turn back. We had come too far, faced too many specters of our past to let darkness consume us again. Together, we stood resolutely, our hearts beating in rhythm, forming a united front against the menacing tide. I caught a glimpse of Sky next to me, her hands trembling yet unwavering. My mother, with weathered courage shining through her gaze, was a portrait of determination. It was here, in this nexus of our shattered selves, that the realization dawned. Our power lay not just in resisting the darkness, but in embracing our entire story, the light, and the heavy burden of what had come before. Remember why we're here, I shouted, voice breaking through the cacophony brought forth by our adversaries. We fight for each other, for everything we lost, but still hold dear. A collective breath was drawn among us. Shadows hesitated on the cusp of seizing us, but our resolve illuminated the space between us and the dark figures. I could feel the warmth of our joined hands. It surged through nerves and fear, binding us together in the thin thread of hope that flickered against despair. Face it, Sky yelled, her voice now a clarion call, cutting through the thickness of hesitation. Our pain does not define us. We are not bound by our pasts. At that moment, the long-coated woman stepped back, her expression shifting, almost as if caught in the tremors of her own reflections. You think you can just rewrite your fate? She called, fear flickering across the barrier she had built between herself and our gathered strength. We aren't rewriting it, I declared, confusion now metamorphosing into power. We're reclaiming it. We are the architects of our own destinies, and we will not let you rob us of that. As those words flowed, they seemed to blossom in the air like wildflowers tearing through concrete. The shadows wavered, pulled back momentarily, and I felt the pulse of courage swell wildly within our gathering. Together, we pushed forward united against the oncoming tide of darkness, embracing the truth of our vulnerability while wielding the weapon of our shared stories. And then, without warning, the earth beneath us began to quake violently, sending ripples through the air as the cavern shook with a broken promise of salvation. The glowing symbols crackled and sparked around us, ignited by the gravity of our unwavering unity. The malevolent figures surrounding us began to writhe and twist, unable to withstand the raw power surging forth from our collective spirit. What is happening? Sky gasped, eyes wide, as the space around us transformed into a whirlwind of blinding light, drowning out the shadows that desperately clawed to reclaim their hold. We're breaking the chains, together, I shouted, voice raising over the chaos. Let the light in. In that pivotal lungful of breath, clarity washed over me, revealing the truth. Darkness thrives not because of its strength, but because of the solitude it sowed among us, separating us from one another and from the warmth of hope. But now, united, the chains dissolving from our hearts struck a resonating chord, as the cavern reverberated with the sound of our combined strength, illuminating everything that held us captive. The last remnants of shadows shrieked and shriveled against the incandescent brilliance, a sudden burst of light blooming before us like a lighthouse piercing through an infernal fog. It enveloped us, igniting the expressions of every soul around, turning our fear into palpable strength. And then, among the brilliant light, I spotted something shifting in the distance, a silhouette emerging, ethereal and empowering, moving gracefully yet with a tenacity that echoed generations of loss reclaimed. A voice, familiar and laced with affection, echoed through the brightness, gentle yet strong. It wrapped around my heart like a forgotten embrace. Sweet child, you have found your way back. Tears stung my eyes as I recognized her, a glimpse of my mother in her vibrant youth, before the shadows deepened their hold. For her smile shone, unabashedly bright, illuminating every contour of loss and regret as it gathered around us like a guardian. Your souls have wrestled through bondages beyond imagination, she continued, each word dancing through the light, touching every heart. It is time to reclaim what belongs to us, what has always belonged. In that moment, I realized we were no longer fighting solely for ourselves or against the darkness. We were driven by love, reclaiming our experiences in every hue of light and shadow, stitching together the tapestry of our existence with every elation and sorrow. With renewed purpose, I grabbed Sky's hand, squeezing my mother's clasp with vigor, gesturing for others to join. The trembling warmth coursed through us. We were one. Together, I cried, our voices blending into one power-laden echo that surged outward. The shadows shrieked as they disintegrated, crumbling under the brilliance of our shared truth, a truth once fractured now harmonized into a symphony of redemption rippling through the air, washing warmth into the corners of long-held doubts. And in that incandescent final embrace, I felt the last shreds of disbelief slip away, melted into the ether as light banished darkness. The chains we had once dragged shattered into a million radiant shards. Littering the path we had forged together vanished from our hearts as love beckoned us welcome as the last shadows dispersed into nothingness. The cavern opened into a horizon illuminated by the dawn of a new day, echoes of our truth ringing through the air, brilliant and unfettered. I stood, heart steady, with Sky and my mother beside me, shielding our love like a banner of courageous light. Together we had navigated the void, and now we emerged, not to simply conquer darkness, but to welcome the light, the irreplaceable love that bound us in all its vibrant shades. There, with shadows cast behind us, we held on to the beautiful truth that our story was not merely written by the chains of the past, but painted on the canvas of every moment we chose to embrace love. We are more than what binds us. We are everything we create. I spoke into the heart of dawn, feeling the whisper of life unfurling around us, where the last rays kissed the horizon, and I felt ready to soar. And in that moment, I finally understood. Freedom lived not in the absence of chains, but in the unyielding power of love woven through the tapestry of our lives, timeless, empowering, and unbreakable. With hope and hearts entwined, we stepped boldly into the new day, leaving the shadows and chains behind where they belonged. And together, filled with love, we began to write our story anew.